star so bright. Pull your hat down, make sure your cinch is tight. Horse is kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. You'll get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight.
Howdy there, I'm Matt McKinley and we're burning daylight.
In the saddle till the job's done right.
Welcome to Burnin' Daylight, the only podcast for the working cowboy. Well, howdy there, daylight burners. Welcome back to the show. Hope you had a good weekend. We got a special guest today. You may have seen some of his work. He's fairly active in the cowboy groups on Facebook and helped put together one of the best documentary films that I've seen on the life of the working cowboy. It's called Cowboys, a Documentary Portrait. I did a whole review on it on this show, John. If I can find the link, I'll send it to you. Maybe you can tell me what I got wrong on it. But my biggest, I guess, criticism of it was it wasn't long enough. And if that's the only criticism I've got for it, I'd say you did a pretty good job. So, John, welcome to the show. Appreciate you joining me today.
Thanks, Matt. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for the kind words about film.
You bet. I've seen your stuff. You're a heck of a photographer, and it seems like you've been around kind of everywhere. It seems like you're an avid motorcycle rider too. It seems like.
Yeah, of late I am. Yeah, no, and there's like no doubt in my mind that it's sort of a surrogate for horse riding for me, and that's why I like it. You know, something between your legs that's moving you forward, and you're kind of out. You know, you feel the wind against your face, and you feel the change in temperature, and you smell things, and you just sort of feel connected to the countryside you're moving through. And it's like that, you know, it's filling a need that I have because I don't get to ride as often as I'd like living in a city.
Yeah, I bet. So we were talking just here earlier. You're at Austin, Texas, which is always, I mean, it's keep Austin weird's been a thing for as long as I can remember. But it seems like it got real weird here in the last several years, but in a different kind of way. But I think you kind of got to have those weird places throughout the country that from the weird places comes a lot of the cool stuff that we get to enjoy, you know?
Yeah, no, and as you and I were kind of talking about, you know, Austin's not what it was in the 70s or 80s. It's like a completely different place, but, you know, it's still turned into something overall good. Like any bigger city, it's got its issues, and you got to get out every so often. And, you know, if I'm not headed out for a branding somewhere along the year, you know, I would definitely go insane. But there are aspects of living in a city I certainly enjoy as long as I can leave it when I want.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought the same thing when I lived up in Fort Collins, which is, you know, that's a pretty small town, but I mean, city-wise anyways. But coming for me, I lived 20 miles south of a town of about 300 or 400 people. Graduated high school with 19, including me in my class, and then I go to, you know, a city of 150,000, and that seemed massive. I mean, it's a little bit of a culture shock, but it's you also had one of the better music scenes I've been around. You know, they really catered to the Texas, Oklahoma, you know, kind of the Austin scene that as they expanded throughout the country, that kind of red dirt Texas scene really had a big impact in Fort Collins, and that was nice because you don't get that in these little bitty towns. Every now and then you might have a little band blow through town, but not very often. And that there's just certain things about living in the city. There is some definite benefit, but I also like to look around and not see anybody too.
Yep. No, it's hard to have both. You know, and I've kind of in my mind struck sort of a perfect balance. I know a lot of guys out on ranches, and you know, I could go to a branding every year if I want, so I can get away when I need to, but at the same time, you know, I go hear 10 or 15 great shows, music shows here in Austin every year, you know, and I thoroughly appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, there's definitely
Willie Nelson, you know, we still have him, lives right around the corner.
One of my favorite memes I've ever seen, it was just a picture of Willie Nelson, and it said, one of these days, these kids are going to have to look around and see what kind of world do they want me and Keith Richards to live in down the road, because I think he's almost
Exactly. Those two will never die. They'll outlive all of us, no doubt about it.
I know it. I always said I hope Willie dies on stage. You know, just ripping a big heater, singing Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain or something, and just croak mid sentence. You know,
I'll guarantee you he will, man. That guy is still, you know, he performs all the time, and it's funny. I've made that joke a million times that he's definitely going to croak on stage.
I think that's the only way he can do it, is just that. Yep. And I feel like Ramblin' Jack Elliott's going to be the same way. He's gonna just croak mid-story with somebody that he met, and
as it should be.
Exactly, that's the way it should be. And like Boots O'Neill, he's probably gonna get bucked off on his head and break his neck one of these days. And I don't think he'd rather go out any other way. So
you know that story about Boots, where when we went and interviewed him for the film, he had been bucked off. I can't remember the name of a horse not too long beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
And the horse came back to the barn without him. And so, of course, everybody got, you know, really worried. And this isn't that long ago. You know, Boots was well in his 80s at that point. And so they went and found him out in the pasture, and he had a bunch of broken ribs and was pretty busted up. And he told them, just leave me here. You know, this is like, I'm done. You know, just leave me here. I'm fine. And they were like, hell no, we're not leaving you here, Boots. You know, we're going to get you out of here. And they, you know, he healed up fine. And he was still riding that horse that bucked him off when we interviewed him for the film. So, I suspect you're probably right that guy, he's going to go a horseback the way Willie's going to go on stage.
Well, I think so. He actually just broke his leg earlier this last fall. He got bucked off. Yeah, he broke his femur about I think he said it was about an inch above his knee that had been replaced. So they couldn't really do surgery on it. So they just had him in kind of a not so much a cast, but like a brace. And he was in pretty rough shape there for a little bit, because he had to lay down and had some pneumonia because of that. But he's back a horseback now.
Oh, okay. I hadn't heard that. And we screened the film, and Boots and several guys from the film came out in Lubbock. I can't remember when that was. I bet it's been, 9-10 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And of course he was doing fine. Tom Morehouse was there, Jeff Bilberry. Yeah, no. So this is the first I've heard that he got in another horse accident and broke his leg. Well, I'm not surprised he's already riding again. That guy.
He's something else.
They broke the mold on Boots, that's for sure.
They really did. I had a chance to go down, and because I had a bunch of people request to have him on the show. And so I did a couple phone interviews with him, but I was able to go down to the Sixes and meet him. And it's really cool. We kind of got to be buddies. And so I try to call him once a week, and he's just, he's quite the guy, just, he's something else. He's got a wealth of knowledge. And I always tell people he's kind of like he's like the cowboy Forrest Gump, except he's not retarded. But he's seen just about everything. He tells that story, his first paying cowboy job. They just dumped him off at the rim of the Paladura Canyon. He waited there for a couple hours for somebody to come get him. And then And then he didn't live inside at all for like the next 10 years or so.
Yeah.
And it was just,
he told us those stories. Yeah, no, there's some, I mean, it's definitely from a different era of cowboying. He's sort of a link back to, and there's not that many of them left. There are a few, but back to sort of those, earlier days when cowboying on those big outfits was really kind of done differently.
Yeah, it really was. And I've never really worked on a real big outfit. I worked on a place up in Montana that ran maybe 3,000 head of mama cows. I mean, it was so fairly good size, but it wasn't anything like the Wine Cup or the Sixes or the Wagners or the JAs or anything like that. It was it was a fairly small outfit compared to some of those, but so I never got to go cowboy on the wagon, but I kind of grew up in farmer country too. So we didn't, one of our biggest pastures, I think that I worked was only about 1,000 acres. And then you get out into the public land stuff and it's 100,000 acres on one range.
Which is the beauty of those big Northern Nevada outfits. They may not run on that much deeded land, but you put that BLM land in and you can ride all day without seeing a fence, which is one of the greatest things you can do cowboying.
Oh, it really is. I guess I was lucky enough to grow up like right on the edge of that BLM stuff. If you went just west of where I grew up, then you got into like, where Picture Canyon, Colorado is?
No.
Okay. It's kind of in that Three Corners area where the Oklahoma Panhandle and New Mexico and Colorado all meet. And there's it's not mountain country, but it's canyon country. And and it just you'd be driving across the prairie and then all of a sudden it drops down about 300 foot into sandstone and cedar canyons, and it's it's just incredible to like, because you go from just flat, the old joke, you can watch your dog run away for 3 days, and to some pretty tough country. It's pretty tough country, and a lot of that stuff is BLM country, and it's not near as big as like when you get into western Colorado and Utah and Nevada, but there's still some pretty good sized parcels through there that a guy can go ride and not see a whole lot of fences, but it's still nothing like the Great Basin stuff.
Yeah, no, those outfits are unique, no doubt about it. And have bred kind of a unique breed of cowboy or buckaroo up there as well.
Really self-reliant, just kind of handy at everything too. Not only are they really
in general, like that's something I've always, I've noted that same thing, and something I've always admired. And like, it was an area of cowboying, there's plenty of them, but it was one where I was deficient. I wasn't as self-reliant as those guys that, spent their whole life cowboying. And obviously by necessity, I mean, you wouldn't last out there, 25 miles from the nearest town if you couldn't figure out how to get stuff done yourself.
Mm-hmm. It seems like every one of those guys out here, they build their own leather stuff, they braid, they they weld, they do and I've got a handful of skills that I can do relatively well, but mostly like my skill comes from reading cattle and sorting and identifying sickness. But I always think I could probably hold my own on just about any outfit. I won't ever be the top hand out there, but I probably won't be in the way too much. But some of those guys are it's incredible to watch them work. And then all the stuff that they can do is pretty incredible.
Yeah, no, it's something to watch a really top hand, and then of course there's like some that are great with horses, some that are good at roping, some that are really good sorting cows or whatever. And, like a real top hand kind of is good at all that stuff. I've always greatly admired those guys and so enjoyed working around them. It's just, I'm like you. I was never going to be a top hand. I was competent, could help get the job done. But yeah, no, watching those guys it's a treat.
It really is. So whereabouts did you come from originally?
Yeah, it's I grew up in Dallas, Texas, believe it or not.
Okay.
My dad was a photographer, and he did a book on the working cowboy back in 1975.
Okay.
And his grandfather was a Teddy Roosevelt Rough Rider and was a cowboy in the out west of the U.S., but a lot down in Central and South America. Worked on some big ranches. They're kind of an odd, strange story. But so my dad kind of had this cowboy bug, and then he went and did that book, and he got to know some ranchers. And I was fascinated by cowboys, largely based on his stories, and then of course Will James books. And and then when I was 12, my dad, sent me a postcard saying I met this rancher named Benny Binion, and if you want a cowboy, he says he'll give you a job for the summer. So after 6th grade, I went to Binion's and spent that first summer there. And then after that, for the next 11 summers, I'd go out with a wagon the first half of the summer and then go back to Binion's the second half of the summer. And, did that, through college and into my first year of law school. And then I put it on ice until I returned to it all to work on the book, my own book, kind of where my dad left off. So yeah, that was sort of how I came to it all.
Well, did you finish law school? I think you did, right?
I did. Yep.
Okay. Did you?
It was funny.
Did you ever practice or?
Yeah, I did. The end of my cowboy career was after my first year of law school. I went out with a padlock wagon the first half of that summer and came back and worked for a law firm in San Antonio the second half, and the pay disparity between the two was pretty apparent when you did them back to back. And I was like, if you're going to go to school, you probably ought to, pursue being a lawyer. And so, yeah, I did. I went to work for a big law firm in DC, and then I went to work for Caterpillar, the big earth moving equipment for 11 years. And they moved me all around the world. And, cowboying just faded to the background. I stayed in touch with some friends, but hardly ever went to a ranch. I did a couple of brandings over all those years. And then I got serious about my own photography when I left Caterpillar for the sake of moving back to Austin. And pretty quickly on started thinking about, projects that I would do that had the potential to turn into books. And one of the first ones that came to mind was, doing one on cowboys. And I will say a big part of it was just for the sake of me being able to get back out to ranches. And so I told my wife, it's funny, I told my wife, hey, I've got this idea that I want to do a book on cowboys, and I want to go out for 2 weeks and come home for 3 over the course of a year. And that's what I'll do to complete the book. And I thought she was on board for that idea. And then a friend of ours had dinner with Erica, my wife, and called me and said, John, she will leave you if you do that. And our boys were both pretty young at the time. I had completely misread my wife. So I kind of did a reset on that and came back and said, well, what if I go out for 10 days, 4 times a year and, take 3 years to do the book? Because I had the idea of going to 12 big outfits, and I definitely was going to be focused on the big outfits. And she was like, I can live with that. So that was kind of how it started, and had a funny story getting back in touch with the Spanish ranch where I had worked, in my earlier days. And that was the first one I went to, and, just kind of rolled on from there. It was, is everything you dream. It was just kind of an excuse to go to every kind of great outfit I ever wanted to visit.
That's awesome. I've kind of got a same, wild hair at my ass to do something of the similar deal, but instead of photography and writing, do it in podcast form and kind of do like like a documentary series. I mean, I'd like very much inspired by the documentary that y'all did. I mean, I had the idea before I saw your film, but I was like, no, that's how it should be done. Like if we're gonna document the cowboy, that's the best I've seen it done in all the films that I've seen. And I was like, you guys really nailed like not only the romance of cowboying, because there is a lot of that to it, but most of it is it's boredom throughout the day, boredom, but you're also on edge all the time, especially if you're riding young horses. You can't let your guard down for very long, or you can get in a real pickle. Yep. And so you're a mixture of like boredom and adrenaline kind of all the time. And it's I thought you guys really captured the kind of the essence of what cowboy life is, and or at least in a way that I haven't seen anybody else do it. Before.
No, and I appreciate that, and that was certainly, me and Bud, that was our intention going into it. Was the word we used most was authentic. We wanted an authentic film about the working cowboy. And so, like, these cowboys sit around in bunkhouses and they watch Westerns and they love to pick them apart. Yep. If you've ever done, like, every little thing that's wrong, that's a different gray horse than that guy was riding last time. And, any
the hell bitch is actually a gelding.
Yeah, exactly. So our notion was, don't want there to be a single thing in there that the guys in the bunkhouse, can pick apart. And there might be one or two of the tiniest little things, and I know where they are, but they are, minor in the grand scheme of things. But that was really the notion behind it. And it's like, I hope the outside world appreciates it, to really get a chance to kind of see. And obviously we focused on the big outfits, even though those smaller outfits are every bit as authentic, do the same kind of work. It was just, we focused in on kind of the subculture of the big outfit cowboy. But, the audience was the cowboy world, like that they would watch it and say, yeah, this is what our life is all about. And like that, certainly for me, because, that's the world I grew up in, like that's what mattered.
Well, I can tell you there's like certain, the fella from the YP was just an excellent interview. I mean, he was just a very compelling character, but there was one scene, and I thought you guys really, and I'm no filmmaker by any means, but it was just, I say this because it's still just, I can see it clear as day in my head. I believe it was the outfit over in Oregon, but there was an Indian kid riding a paint horse that bust into, and I was like,
Spanish ranch.
Was it on the Spanish? Okay. And it was just the perfect essence of like the young working cowboy. Cause like you didn't have the dramatic music and like a slow, like freeze frame. No, you just let it play out. And that kid bucks back and forth. And every time he's got a big grin on his face and he's talking shit to his buddies as he bucks by him, And I was like, that's cowboy shit there. Yeah. That is like the essence of cowboy shit.
Yeah, no, that's Junior Harney. His dad's a well-known buckaroo, Woody Harney. When I went to the TS for the book, Woody was the buckaroo boss on the TS. And then I can't remember where I first met Junior. It might have been on the Spanish ranch, but Woody and Junior were both working there. And, they're interviewed side by side, father and son.
Yeah.
Later. And, Junior, he's like, I don't know if he's calmed down. I haven't seen Junior for a couple of years now, but he's definitely one of those, buckaroos with a real wild hair. And, he loved riding bucking horses. And he's a great guy as well. And one of those, great Indians off the res that, he could ride, he could rope. He was just a good hand all the way around. And knew the job and did it well. Yeah. No, good guy. Junior and Woody both.
That's yeah, that was a really cool scene. I was like, no, that's as cowboy as it gets, because there wasn't anything dramatic about it. It was just he's sitting up there like he belonged there, gave that horse his head, and then was chirping at at everybody else as he bucked in front of him. That's perfect.
Yeah, no, every guy that's ever worked on working ranch, certainly those big outfits, has seen that scene 100 times, where like, all right, I'm riding the green horse in my string this morning, let's get it over with first thing, which is exactly what he was doing. So
yeah, I was talking with a buddy the other day, and we were kind of going over that same thing. It's just like part of horsemanship and animal handling. Like, it's always, you always want to do the least amount of stress, but like regardless of how good you are, there's always some stress on your animals. So it's not no stress, it's low stress. And sometimes the lowest amount of stress is just like, I know we're going to have a fight today, so let's get it over right now, because we got shit to do. And that's the thinking behind it. And a lot of times us guys in the cowboy world will get looked down upon for the horsemanship side of things, and like, yeah, okay, but you people don't actually work on a horse. Like, you go to shows and stuff, or you rodeo or whatever, or you go on trail rides. No, like, we're using this animal to get a job done, and we do that every day. And so it's a different type of horsemanship, but it's horsemanship just the same.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I can't hardly ride a horse if it's not, towards accomplishing a task. So a friend invited me out to ride here just the other week. It's the first time I've probably ever ridden in Austin. And it was just kind of wandering around in a pasture. And it was just had almost zero appeal to me. Like, if there's not a purpose to my riding, I just doesn't hold any interest. And I think if you've cowboyed and a horse is part of getting the job done and moving cows and whatever else, or even if you're just covering country, you're going somewhere where there's a purpose at the end of it. Because I do love trotting out in the morning. It's like my favorite part of the day. But there's still a purpose to your riding. I can't hardly do it otherwise.
I agree. We same conversation as me and Tommy Gassell. We're talking, and that's same way. I don't ride for pleasure anymore. Like, it's if I'm not doing a job. I mean, I could be on a day off or whatever, and have somebody be like, "Hey, you want to go gather a couple cows?" Fuck yes, I will. I work in a feedlot, so like anytime I get a chance to get outside and do a job is great. But when I'm going in the desert, it's to put miles on my horses anymore. Like, that's that once I ride out the feedlot gate, I'm not doing it for fun. It's to put an attitude adjustment on get a little reset on my horse's head.
Yeah,
and
which is riding with a purpose to me. Even though you're not moving cows, like, there's a reason you're riding this horse.
Yeah, but if somebody says, "Do you want to go on a ride Saturday?" No, not really.
No, me either. I don't. I mean, I did it, and I knew I wasn't really going to like it. I mean, of course, I'm throwing my saddle on the back of a horse, and you're swinging into the saddle, and you move. I mean, that part's nice, but it's just, man, that fades so quickly. And it's funny. I feel the same way on my motorcycle. Like, these people will go on a day ride for the sake of riding your motorcycle around. If I'm not going on a long trip with some kind of destination, and it just, it doesn't need to be anywhere with a purpose, but you've got some destination, like on a longer trip, I have the same feeling. Like, just going on a joyride doesn't appeal to me that much. And I know it's because it's transitioned over. I feel the same way about motorcycles as I do about horses. I just need some purpose to it. It's as much as I enjoy riding a motorcycle or just riding a horse, like the physical act of it, if it's not coupled with a purpose, that just loses something that's unappealing.
Well, yeah, and part of that goes back to my horses. Is like they got a job just as much as I do, and we're doing that job together.
Yeah.
And if we're not, like, if it's not a branding pin or a roping or something, they need a day off just as much as I do. And if if I'm just riding them to ride them, that's it seems wasteful. It's putting extra miles on a horse that don't need to be there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think of it in terms of, what they want. It's just like, for me, it doesn't appeal.
Yeah.
Well, but obviously you get these ranch horses, they aren't interested in just wandering around either. They want to work every bit as much as a cowboy does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the more you ride them, the more wear you put on them. I mean, it's just the same as riding a motorcycle. Just with every mile comes a little more wear. And yeah, if you're using them to get a job done, like, you use them to get the job done, and then let them have their time off.
Yeah, yep.
But it's a really a crazy history and just a wild lifestyle. And it's been said, I think, probably since the first Spaniards brought cattle over to the Americas, like that working cattle a horseback was a dying breed, because technology was always advancing, and they were, there was something that always was changing. They're like, pretty soon these cowboys won't be needed. And I don't know if you'll ever really get rid of a guy a horseback working cows. I think that's always gonna. I don't know what the ranch type setting will be in the future, but I think the cow and the horse are almost they're you can't tear them apart anymore. I mean, once a guy figured out how to work a cow horseback like that, that's it. That's the best way to do it.
I mean, I have spent so many hours thinking about, the longevity of the cowboy, and, all the predictions of the demise of, the horseback cowboy. I mean, you think about it, after the trail drives, they said, that's it. The working cowboy horseback's dead. The invention of barbed wire, they're dead. And there's always kind of the next thing that was going to kill them, and
the bumper pull trailer.
Yeah. I mean, so here's my take on it, and it's somewhat consistent with yours. And again, and I've watched it now, like, basically through a generation. Start when I was 12, I'm 60 now, so that's 48 years of having kind of watched the cowboy world. And there have been some changes. Like, there is no doubt about it. And some of them I lament. Like, so there's still big outfits, that run, let's call it 5 to 10 or 11,000 mother cows, and require a full crew of horseback cowboys to get the work done, to do all the cycle of getting through a cow from, birth to the market. And there's probably, like, we've lost a few big outfits over the years because they get busted up, and the family, the person that kept it together dies and the kids sell it off, but not that many. And there's a couple that have been put together since then, like Singleton's is a classic example. It's up around 1 million acres, not all contiguous. And Henry Singleton started putting that together in our lifetime, but there's not many big outfits being assembled. So, I mean, there's still a lot of places running that many cows on big open country, a full crew of horseback cowboys. And to what you said, like, when it comes to these big outfits, there is no better way to gather and work a big group of cows than doing it a horseback, because a horse has the same ability that a cow does, and a cow doesn't want you steering its destiny towards a feedlot and ultimately, a packing plant. So it's gonna, try and outsmart you every step of the way. There is no machine that can keep up with a cow with that mindset. And I don't think, the market will ever invent one, because there's not enough demand to justify someone investing all that bandwidth into coming up with a machine that's that agile when you got a horse and you got a bunch of men and women that love doing it a horseback. With that being said, there have been some dramatic changes in the cowboy world. And so Boots, in an interview I heard him, he said, someone asked him, and it might have been when we screened that film last, what's the biggest change? He said the cell phone, which kind of surprised me, although I get it. And he said, it used to be like you just needed to know your place in a big pasture, and you just needed to know where the other guys were around you. And, you needed to make sure you kept an eye on the person to your right and your left, and you didn't get in front of them or drop too far behind. And, you needed to sort of know the country. He said, now you just pick up a phone and you call them, where are you at? How many do you have? And you can sort of coordinate like a big gather by cell phone. To me, the bigger change has been the truck and trailer, which you referenced. Like when I was cowboying in the 70s and 80s, there were obviously trucks and trailers, but they weren't an intimate part of or they weren't a commonplace part of most of these big outfits. Like once in a blue moon, you'd load your horses in a trailer and go to the far side of the ranch and do something out there. 9 times out of 10, you trotted out in the morning, and your day would start with, a 2-hour trot to get to where you started working. And I loved it. It was my favorite part of the day, because it was the one time that you could let your guard down a little, especially if you were on a broken horse. And you just, you're riding with a crew of 15 guys, you're at a high trot, across big, beautiful open country, and your mind could wander a little. Like it was and it was cool, and the horses were blowing, steam out of their nose, and you could hear the spurs, the rouse of the spurs. It's just magical, and
you get to enjoy the sunrise and
all of that. And I will say now, almost no one trots out. It's reversed. 20% of the time they'll trot out, 80% of the time they load their horses in a truck and trailer, and it's absolutely at the expense of that trot in the morning. The other thing that that the trailer killed was the wagon. Now instead of they just trailer to the far side of the ranch instead of taking a wagon out there and setting up, on those big outfits, you'd typically camp about 4 days in a single spot, and then you'd move, and you may or may not move that far to your next spot. But, you were out at least 4 weeks, usually 5, kind of moving every 4 days, to get everything branded. The trailer killed it. There's still a few wagons left. Arizona, as Greg Snow says in the film, still have some meaningful wagons that stay out for a long time and with a real purpose. Most of them, it's the ranch owners kind of just doing it for the sake of, keeping the tradition alive. Like those to me, so the truck and trailer, because it had such a profound impact on 2 really important aspects of cowboying, that morning trot out and the wagon, I think that's been the biggest change that I've seen. But with that being said, all those young buckaroos and those young cowboys on all those outfits, from Texas all the way to northern Nevada and Montana, they're the same type of guys that were going to big outfits when I was doing it in 1975, got the same wild hair. Some of them grew up on ranches, some of them didn't, some of them leave it after, 6, 7, 8, 9 years of doing it and go into something else. Some of them stick with it. I don't know if there's any more or less. I bet there's no fewer of those kind of guys drifting around to these big outfits than there was, 40, 50 years ago. So all the books, Last of a Breed, The Dying Cowboy, I kind of like they were saying that in the 60s and 70s. Hell, Will James, was writing about the demise of the big outfit drifting cowboy, and they're still out there. There's still a bunch of them out there. All those guys in the film, every last one of them, every guy in my book, are all those same drifting cowboys, and they're the exact same type of guys that were in Bank Langmore's book and Bill Allard's book and Kurt Marcus's book, and even, by the way, some of the exact same guys like Wade Cooper and Jack Cooper, and some of them still at it. Not many, but few.
Yeah, it's a fascinating look back at it when you look at how, I mean, like the beef boom of the 1860s and 70s, that like just the sheer amount of cattle that they had running wild in Texas after the Civil War. I mean, it was like the perfect explosion of just like, market economy, seeing a hole that needed filled, and a whole bunch of men that needed a job after the Civil War. And there was, but not many of them, like you said, not many of them stuck with it. It has always been a few that, yeah, it is a tough job.
It's a tough way of life, man. It is amazing how few guys that I cowboyed with stuck with it till the end. Like, I caught up with a lot of them on Facebook, and man, a lot of them went to work in the mines. Some of them became like ranch real estate brokers. I mean, there is not but a handful that stuck with big outfits till the end. One of them, like one of the few I know, I mean, Boots, obviously, but I didn't work with Boots when I was younger. One of the only ones I know, and I know I'm missing some, but he was such a close friend and stuck with it, is a guy named Wade Cooper. That's the Buckaroo boss on part of the ZX Ranch in Paisley, Oregon. He was at Binion's my first summer I got there. So he was like one of the first working cowboys I ever saw in my life. We're still friends to this day. On my last big motorcycle ride, I, just showed up at his house in Paisley, and it was great to catch up. It was on a Sunday, so I figured I'd catch him at home, and I did. Yeah, so it's it's hard to stick with, and obviously the pay and all of that is a tough deal. And how do you retire as a cowboy? And Gary Morton talks about that in the film. How tough that is, as does Boots. And Jim Brooks, that legendary big outfit cowboy from Montana. He was a hell of a bronc rider, Jim Brooks. But same deal, Jim stuck with it till the end, and then, tried to kind of, cobble together a life around horses in the meantime, doing workshops and, singing in a cowboy band and all of that. And that's what happens to most of these guys. They stick with the horse world, but they move off the big outfits, like Brian Newbert, kind of horse trainer and doing clinics and all that.
Well, I mean, Waddy Mitchell is a perfect example too.
Yeah,
went from a big outfit to being full-time cowboy poet, and then getting the cowboy on his terms, I guess.
Yeah, but you're no longer drawing a paycheck from the big outfits. I mean, you get to go in and do it, and I put myself in that category. Like, I'm not drawing a paycheck, and there's a whole different deal when you aren't drawing a paycheck. And there's no, you don't have the responsibility to get the job done, and you can float in and float out and help them brand, or show up and go out with a wagon for a week. It's just a lot different than those guys that draw a paycheck till the very end. It's a rare group of people, because it's a damn hard way of life. I mean, Boots O'Neill's, breaking his femur as he's hitting 90. How many people are willing to do that? There's not, you could count on one hand the number of men or women that are that kind of tough and committed to that, to do it till the end. I get it. I didn't, I left it.
Yeah. Well, it's just try to picture another 90-year-old even stepping on a horse on their own accord. Like most of them are in a walker or a wheelchair by 90 years old. And and yeah, he said every now and then one of the young bucks will throw a saddle up there for him. Just he said they don't need to, but I'm not going to tell them not to either.
Yeah,
So,
right. Yeah, no,
and
it's it's sort of like, you hit 60 and you can still wrestle calves if you're at a place where they wrestle calves. But if someone's like, hey, why don't you brand? It's like, yeah, I'm happy to brand instead of wrestle calves,
Yeah, that's exactly right. I listening to you talk on the trot out in the morning, I agree that's one of the best feelings is and I've been in the feedlot now for when I start 09, so coming up on like 12, 13 years of full-time, in the feedlot cowboy. And like shipping days are like that, where you trot out to get, and you're not going for 2 hours before you get, where you're going, obviously, but you've got like the full morning ahead of just loading and shipping cattle, and it's all fast paced because those trucks are on a schedule and everybody's on a schedule, and like fall and like spring, early mornings when it's still just real crisp in the air, and your blood's pumping, and you're usually on a good horse because you got to get a job done, and the shipping and weighing cattle is one of the it's the prime spot to get in a wreck because you're just cramming a bunch of cattle into a small space, and so you want a good horse under you, so you're on edge a little bit, but your horse knows what to do, and you're just kind of in the zone, and it's I love those mornings like that. It's like you get a workout right first thing, and it's and you can still, like, as you're trotting to get the next pin, you can enjoy the sunrise a little bit too, and it's
that's like, there is romance to it. And again, we didn't want to overdo the romance in the film or in the book, but it's there.
You can't discount it.
Yeah, no, it is obviously what draws, like, anyone that's gone to the cowboy world that wasn't raised in it, they're drawn there by the romance. Now, most of them, like, once the reality of what a hard way of life it is sets in, it drives the vast majority off, but then there are those that, like, they like the hard bit as much as they like the romance, but like what takes you there is this notion of the freedom of being out there and being a horseback, and like, just nothing but a day's work in front of you, and you finish one day's work, it seldom rolls over into the next day. The only thing you ever worry about tomorrow is what horse might be up in your string, and if it's one that's going to give you a hard time. But one day ends and that's it, man. Like, you get an office job as a lawyer or whatever, you work on projects that keep you anxious for 3 months, and you're worrying about stuff 3 months down the road. A cowboy, it's like the day ends, you go to, you crawl into your bedroll with a clean mind. It's just, you aren't worried about tomorrow. It just starts fresh every day. And I got to tell you, man, that is a wonderful way to live your life. Like, that to me is part of the romance, in addition to the big open spaces and all of that. And being a horseback all day is a great deal, but it's just this, life kind of one day at a time you just can't overstate, how good that is for the soul.
Yeah, it really is. And it's funny. I don't know how many times some of my friends that either run their own ranches or just guys that are not in the cattle business at all, they'll ask me about the cattle market, and I'm like, man, I don't know. I just go, I punch cows, man. I don't worry about the market. Like, I'll hear about it here and there, but if you ask me what live cattle we're bringing that day, I'm like,
those are the people that have to worry about the longer term stuff, like the ranch owners and ranch managers. They don't get I'm talking about the working cowboy.
Yeah.
It's hey, do you mind if we take like a 20-second break?
Yeah.
I'm going to run to the restroom and come right back.
That'll work. We're almost at an hour, so we'll call that for the main show. So where can they find you on social media and find your work and whatnot?
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm on Facebook. You can just type my name in. Instagram, I don't do too much. I do more of I put more effort into Facebook, which is just my name. And then, of course, I have a website for my photography, johnlangmorephotos.com. And, you can find the book Open Range on Amazon, and the film is also on Amazon, Cowboys. You just type in Cowboys, a documentary portrait, and you can find it and watch it.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time, John. We'll let him I'll let you go, but we're
going to come back or?
Yeah, we'll come back and do another 20 minutes if that's all right.
Okay, yeah, sure. No, absolutely. I'll be 20 seconds.
All right. So that's John Langmore, everybody. Appreciate him coming on. If you'd like to hear the rest of this, go to patreon.com/burning-daylight. And thanks for listening. Now move your ass. We're burning daylight.
Your eyes up in the morning, beneath the stars so bright. Pull your hat down, make sure your cinch is tight. Horses kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. You'll get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight. Burning daylight. Burning daylight. In the saddle till the job's done right. Burning daylight. Well, life is just a gather, and you won't catch 'em all. But when you ride through the gate, make sure you sit up tall. I can see the horizon, it's looking pretty bright. Well, get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight. Burning daylight. Burning daylight. In the saddle till the job's done right.